Few programs are built to chase championships next year. Ohio State is one of them, and it's not by accident.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to your Hump Day edition of Locked On Buckeyes, which is your daily Ohio State podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, veteran sports talk host, delivering passionate coverage about your Buckeyes. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. During today's show, we will discuss some challenges the Buckeyes will face next year in the regular season, as well as the importance of Ryan Day, making sure the team is prepared for every situation. But first, as 2026 is officially underway, as the previous season is over, we can now look at what is to come in 2026. It's a season where Ohio State returns the best player in college football in Jeremiah Smith, a very accurate quarterback in Julian Sayin, has replaced some key guys on defense with some veteran players. And Ohio State is set up currently to be very successful in 2026. And they're set up to not only be successful, to chase a Big Ten title and to chase another national championship as well, where there are over 130 FBS programs. The reality is that not everybody is able to say they're chasing both a conference and national title. You can't. It's not possible, because some schools know they're going to struggle to get 500. Some schools know they have no shot at being at 500. Ohio State is not only going to be 500 next year or above 500. If everything hits like you think it may, they could go undefeated, which will be a tall task, but that's what Ohio State is shooting for. Not shooting for losing at all, but how to accomplish the goal of beating the opponents on your schedule, which means you're going to beat your rival, you're going to win the Big Ten title, and you're going to win a national championship. And it's very easy to look at Monday's national championship game and to be a little annoyed that Ohio State's not in that game, especially knowing that Ohio State was probably the closest team to being able to beat Miami and Indiana in the playoff. Ohio State had their shot to get there. They didn't get there, which allows you to still feel some type of way about Ohio State not winning the Natty this year. That's the past. And as many coaches have to do, they have to look forward and not allow the past to provide and become a cloud in front of their vision. They can't look back at the past. But for next season, not only do they have Julian Sayin, Jeremiah Smith, and some key guys on defense, you're bringing back a very veteran offensive line. And while a lot of Ohio State fans are not fans of Ryan Day and the other coaches going after some firepower and some beef on the offensive line so you can be more athletic and you can be more versatile, being able to use different run schemes, the Buckeyes trust their recruiting. They trust their development. And I think Ryan Day is on a right path there. It'd be very easy for anybody to look at how Ohio State's O-line played in the last two games of the season and think, man, they're just not good enough. Maybe they are good enough against most teams, but they ran into two teams that also played in the national championship, and those two teams were literally bad matchups for Ohio State, and the Buckeyes had no answer. And I think that's more of the correct opinion to have. It's not that Ohio State's offensive line was bad. It was that they ran into a couple of teams this year that were bad matchups for them, and the Buckeyes didn't have an answer. But moving forward, I believe Ryan Day is going to try to do some things different, because in every offseason, he has done things a little bit different. Now, it hasn't been drastic changes like going from the Kerry Coombs, Matt Barnes era in 2021 to a Jim Knowles hire in 2022, or not even bringing back a defensive coordinator from the year you won a Natty to going out and getting Matt Patricia. Those were pretty big shifts in Ryan Day's philosophy in coaching higher approach, and they were very beneficial for the team in the next season, at least one season under Patricia, 3 years under Knowles. You can see the progression over the past 4 years in the Buckeyes defense. There's been a progression, but Ryan Day knows how to tweak things. Now, we look at the coaching hires and talking about how Ryan Day needs to hit on certain things. Ryan Day also needs to hit on certain things when it comes to the offseason and the winter workouts right now. Because if you look out there and you look at the national championship, the last game we watched, or many of us watched this year, you look out there and see teams that are players that are physically and mentally tough. We talked about this, I believe, on Tuesday's show, which was recorded before the national championship game. But you look out there and watch that game, and you're thinking, wow, the Buckeyes really need to fine-tune and make sure the players are physically and mentally tough. Because if you're set up for success in 2026 to compete for conference and national championships, that's one thing. But to get there, your guys need to be mentally and physically tougher. And you can start working on those things right now. The benefit for Ohio State is you don't play a game until Labor Day weekend. I believe their week 1 game against Ball State is on September 5th. So you're not looking at a game where you are in week 0 or Ohio or the football schedule starts in the summer. You literally have 8 months. You have almost 8 full months, over 8 full months to get ready for the next season. And what you do now in these workouts, tweaking the workouts, tweaking the team building activities that the team has, those will help you down the road. But also when I think about Ohio State being set up for success, look around the college football landscape and where Ohio State sits in regards to where some of the national writers and media members are putting Ohio State right now when it comes to the way too early top 26 polls. Some of these polls don't really mean what you think, but I think they give a great picture right now in regards to where the Buckeyes currently sit compared to teams like Texas and Georgia and Oregon and Notre Dame. All those schools are bringing back their starting quarterbacks from last year. And in the CBS Sports poll, the way too early top 26 poll, the Buckeyes are currently number 1 in that poll. They start off their description with this line from Brandon Marcello, quote, "The nation's most accurate passer, Julian Sayin, and the best player in the sport, Jeremiah Smith, returned to Ohio State," end quote. Look back to On 3's way too early top 26. The Buckeyes are number 1. Sports Illustrated's poll, the Buckeyes are number 1. Fox Sports, they're number 2. USA Today, they're number 2. ESPN, they're number 6. When you think about where the Buckeyes currently stand, yes, we can look at where last year went. We can look at how last year ended and where the Buckeyes fell short even before losing their final 2 games, the last 2 games of the year. But when you look at all around college football, would you rather have Gunnar Stockton or Julian Sayin? These are questions. I'm not answering them for you. Would you rather have Julian Sayin or Arch Manning? Would you rather have Julian Sayin or Dante Moore? Would you rather have Julian Sayin or Josh Hoover at Indiana, who is transferring to a new school? Think about where the Buckeyes currently sit. Would you rather have Jalen McClain or another safety that doesn't know Patricia's defense? Think about where the Buckeyes are. Being able to get transfers in Earl Little Jr. and Terry Moore to come in to allow the safety room to be a whole lot stronger, to be guys that aren't just veterans as far as having a few starts. No, they're older players that have quite a few starts. One of them, Earl Little Jr., couldn't get off to the NFL, decided to stay in college. Terry Moore coming off of a year where he was hurt last year towards ACL, but he didn't have the wear and tear, the physical beating that you had endure during a football season. The Buckeyes are still set up for success. Let's not lose sight that the Buckeyes are still one of the better teams in the Big Ten and are still one of the better teams in the country. And if you're at the top of the Big Ten right now, you have the best shot or a better shot than most schools in the country to win the national championship. One thing Ryan Day must need to lean into right now to make sure the team is successful next year, win the Big Ten title. You haven't won the Big Ten since 2020. Since 2020. Yeah, Justin Fields is a great quarterback for Ohio State. Started for a couple of years, won the Big Ten title in both of those seasons. Stroud was a good quarterback. Was great. Kyle McCord, a good quarterback. Will Howard, good quarterback. Same thing can be said about Julian Sayin. None of those guys did what a transfer quarterback and Justin Fields did in 2019 and 2020. And that's something I think that Ryan Day needs to lean into, because if you're at the top of this conference, you're probably one of the top coach or maybe number 2 coach in the country, and your team's going to have a legit shot to win a national championship. So moving forward, Ryan Day, make sure you get those things right. You got the portal correct. I don't think the Buckeyes are really going to lean into making many big moves in the portal moving forward. But while they may not be doing those things, the Buckeyes need to make sure they lean into what has made them successful so far this offseason and to make that even better throughout the next few months so that the Buckeyes start the 2026 season, they hit the ground running. Speaking of being able to hit the ground running, the Buckeyes are prepared for a lot of things this year, but there are certain areas they weren't prepared in the ways that they should have been, which leads to why Ryan Day must make sure that the Buckeyes are fine-tuning their preparation for the season as we speak. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them in the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to get something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then apply your profit boosts to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. You'll be able to get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Buckeyes compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. An invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which is a big group chat for Buckeye fans like ourselves to talk about the team that we love. Go to lockedonbuckeyes.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. Ryan Day has done a great job, and he's gotten a lot of heat over the past few weeks as Ohio State has watched Miami and Indiana run down the road to get to the national championship game. And then when you see a team that you lost to win the national title, it makes that loss on New Year's Eve hurt even more. But let's not lose sight of one clear thing about Ryan Day. Ryan Day is one of the better coaches in college football. It's hard to find a coach right now in the sport you can look at it, there's a true debate for a few coaches. But there are over 120, maybe over 125 coaches that you don't think have a legit opportunity to be the #1 coach or a top coach in the sport. You could even go even further and say over 131, I think it's 136 FBS schools. That's how many coaches aren't better than Ryan Day. Ryan Day knows what it means to be a Buckeye. He knows what it means to be the head coach at Ohio State. But there are areas where Ryan Day can improve for him to be the best coach in the country. I think there's right now a legit conversation between him, Kirby Smart, Kurt Cignetti. Some will say Dan Lanning and Mario Cristobal. I don't think Mario Cristobal and Dan Lanning are better coaches. There's a debate. So you could say the true debate is Cristobal, Lanning, Day, Cignetti, and Smart as far as the top 5 coaches in the sport. And you're trying to figure out which one is the best among those 5. I think every coach has a legit debate and a conversation to hold that title. Well, one way that Ryan Day can hold that title in the future is making sure the Buckeyes are prepared for every situation. Now, there may be situations that you didn't think about, and you have to come up with the solution on the fly, and that's real life. That's real football. That's how coaches make their money. They realize in real time, we didn't discuss this. We didn't have a plan in place for this, but here's our best plan moving forward for what's coming our way right now. And the thing about that 4th and 5 QB draw that Cignetti had called in the Big Ten championship game where he called a timeout. I'm thinking, why are you calling a timeout? But he called a timeout. He thought about it. I believe they even said that him and his coaches debated that call for 45 minutes. You're thinking 45 minutes? Well, that's the type of nerd preparation that you need to have, not just for big games like that, but to be an elite college football coach, you have to spend a lot of time working on the little details. You would not think on 4th and 5 that a QB draw would be the call, but it was. Now, there was a team, I forget what team it was early in the season, that scored on a QB draw in the red zone on Miami. So maybe that was a reason why, but still, 4th and 5, you're up 3. If you don't get it, Miami can go down and score, even if it's just a field goal. Game is tied. It's a completely different dynamic. You're trying to maybe throw some different calls out there so that you can find yourself to quickly get in scoring range. No, they knew the call. Their linemen were ready. They were mentally locked in, and they weren't exhausted mentally or physically. And the next thing you know, Mendoza literally had a Heisman moment in the national championship game. Well, those are the kinds of things I think Ryan Day moving forward needs to be prepared for, because it seemed like even in the season, they weren't prepared for every short yardage situation. They weren't prepared for red zone answers. They weren't prepared for your running backs to get 3 yards on 4th and 2. They weren't prepared for those situations. Where in the previous year, you knew the Buckeyes could lean on Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins. Those are the top 2 guys that if you needed to get yards, 3 yards on 4th and 2, they could get it. Well, I really didn't hear Ryan Day speak much on if it's 4th and 2, we have to get 3 yards. He didn't really say it that much this year. And I don't know if it was his way of saying we don't have a guy that can get that done, or that was a previous year's thought. It shouldn't have been. That should carry over into the next season. And even if you don't say it, we see it right before our very eyes, which that's kind of what separates Ryan Day and Ohio State from beating Miami and from beating Indiana, making sure you prepare for every situation. The unthinkable happened. The thought that no one ever thought would be a reality in 2014 when Braxton Miller went down with a season-ending injury in the game against Michigan. JT Barrett goes down with an injury that knocks him out for the rest of the season. In comes Cardale Jones. Now, you don't plan for those things to happen. Sometimes you have to come up with a plan on the fly. But Urban Meyer realized the type of player that Cardale Jones was. He also knew he has Ezekiel Elliott. He has Devin Smith. He has other guys out there that are Michael Thomas that can make big-time plays on the football field. And so instead of trying to put the ball in the arm of a very inexperienced quarterback, we're going to do it while also leaning on our run game and allowing our playmakers to make a whole lot of plays. Well, Urban made a plan on the fly, and it worked. It never seemed like Ohio State was ready for every situation. And I think this ties into the importance of bringing the right people in. Because Ryan Day is not going to have every thought and every situation in his mind. He cannot have a plan for everything because, I mean, a person can, but it's more realistic that that person is going to lean on the expertise of the other coaches, the assistant coaches, the quality control coaches, the assistant D-line coach, the assistant to the assistant coaches, because those guys are going to think a little bit different than Ryan Day. Some may think a whole lot different than Ryan Day. But their vision, their approach, their own film study is going to help Ohio State in very big games. Because if you think about Ohio State against Indiana in the Big Ten title, if they were more prepared for even the little details and the little situations, they might beat IU. Against Miami, if they worked on the O-line, they better prepare the O-line for a physical team like that, they might beat Miami. And maybe look at an Ohio State team last year that won the national championship. I don't believe they were better than IU or Miami. I don't. They weren't more prepared. They weren't physically ready for what those teams threw their way. They weren't. But what if they were? We can play the what-if game now while also realizing Ohio State didn't really have it all last year. When you're as talented as Ohio State is, and I was listening to the Cover 3 podcast, their live reaction show to the national championship game, and I think Tom Fornelli and Bud Elliott, when the question was asked, what team was he closest to, Miami and IU, they both said it's probably Ohio State. Not word for word. That was the thought. It's probably Ohio State. When it's probably Ohio State, the preparation for those games, when Ohio State play those two teams, and the Buckeyes really not being ready for what those teams do their way, not really being prepared, which has been a problem at times under Ryan Day, really set them back in both of those games. A 10-point loss and a 3-point loss separate Ohio State from having an opportunity to win back-to-back national championships. But the Buckeyes can look at their schedule this year to be more prepared to win a national championship next season. While the schedule has not been released yet, you can look at their opponents in next season and saying, this schedule will prepare Ohio State for the college football playoff. When you look at any schedule in any season, you want to try to figure out where are the tough spots, where could your team get tripped up, but you also just want to look at the opponents. And that's all we currently have with Ohio State's schedule for next season. We only know the opponents Ohio State is going to play. And those opponents, as my computer decided to not bring up what I pulled up earlier, as you look at the opponents on Ohio State's schedule, you quickly realize, this is not going to be the easiest path in the world. Yeah, the non-conference slate, there's one power conference team that the Buckeyes play. There are two cupcakes. They play Ball State September 5th. They go to Austin to play Texas on September 12th, and then they play Kent State back in the shoe on September 19th. The Big Ten schedule that Ohio State currently has, these are the opponents. You have to go to Indiana on October 17th. You have to go to Iowa, to Nebraska. You're home against Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, Northwestern, Oregon, and you have to go to the LA Coliseum to play USC. On the surface of the schedule, at IU is going to be difficult. At Iowa is going to be difficult. At Nebraska is going to be difficult. Home against Michigan, that goes without saying. Home against Oregon, very, very difficult. At USC. That on the surface right there is a whole lot harder than what Ohio State had this past season. Penn State being down didn't help. You didn't have Oregon. Washington was a solid team. I think some people probably had them a little bit overrated. Injuries hurt Washington, not only when Ohio State went to Husky Stadium, but throughout the season. So you really never got a fully healthy Oregon squad. And next year, if Ohio State played Washington, I really wonder how good they're going to be, because I'm sure there are some players on that team that are upset that their quarterback tried to ditch them after signing a contract to stay at Washington. So that's one part there with that school, but you need a difficult schedule if you want to win a national championship. And I honestly think that Ohio State's schedule this past year was the big reason why Ryan Day decided to slow walk this thing and not attack and not fix things when they came up. I truly believe Ryan Day saw that and said, oh, we'll be fine. We can get to the Big Ten title game by playing this style of play, but you got to figure out how to flip the switch. And they never did it. Ryan Day had all of us leaning in and saying, not all, most of us saying, oh, man, when they going to attack, it's time to attack. We're trying to play the long game and play for a 16 or 17 game season. And so when we do that, we want to try to have less wear and tear in the season and have more players being able to get some rest in real time. I think back to the 2019 season, they were running through everybody. They blew teams out. And what did you find? Halfway through the third quarter, most of your starters were off the field. You put backups out there. That game plan seemed a whole lot better than what Ohio State did this year. Maybe that would have maybe that would have been a great formula so that Cardinal Tate didn't have to miss time. Jeremiah Smith didn't miss time. I'm no rocket scientist, but there's a clear difference between what happened in 2019 in the regular season and this year. You let me know which result you like better. Ohio State right now, this schedule, it's difficult. But you need this type of grind to be prepared for the college football playoff. Weaker schedules don't help. As it still stands right now, at the time of this recording, they have not officially announced changes for next year's playoff format. The SEC still wants 16 teams. The Big Ten still wants 24 teams in the playoff. They are still holding strong on their stances. And it's possible that with the deadline will force a decision by one school to lean into the 24 if they want 16 or lean into 16 if they want 24. We're going to wait to figure out where things sit with the playoff format on Friday. It's likely that the Buckeyes will still be, and other teams in college football will still be preparing to play in a 12-team invitational. It's more of an invitational than a playoff because you literally get invited based off criteria that is a little bit weird. It's really weird, honestly, but it's an invitational. And the Buckeyes can get invited, but will this schedule allow them to get invited? Because you may look at this and say, well, Jay, going down to Texas, Ohio State might win that. Okay, cool. Ryan Day normally wins early season non-conference games. And the one he lost was actually at home against the Ducks. Still can't believe that game actually happened. But if you want to say a toss-up at IU, I can understand that. A toss-up at USC, I can understand that. Home against Oregon, the toss-up, I can get that. I mean, there's probably legit 4 or 5 toss-up matchups right now on Ohio State's schedule. And that should force every player, or no, that should fuel, not force, that should fuel every player to do more now so that when you get there in that part of the season, you're ready for anything. Because when you look at it, this is more of what people say the SEC teams deal with every year. Having to go to USC, isn't that kind of like going to a Georgia or an Alabama? Well, no, not the same because the teams aren't as good. But USC is a team that's really like it's on the come up. It's a team that could compete for a Big Ten title next year. I don't know if I'm there to say they will, but Ohio State, Michigan is going to be competing. IU, Oregon, Penn State. Who's to say USC is not one of the teams there? You could legit have 6 teams that are competing for the Big Ten title that all have elite talent, really good coaching, and have a formula to get there, and a path to get there. You need this kind of grind. And this is going to test Ryan Day in ways that he hasn't been tested in a while because Ohio State's schedule, especially with the 18-team format, it hadn't been the hardest. We looked at this past year and talked about how you got home against Minnesota. They traveled to Husky Stadium. Maybe it was, you traveled to Husky Stadium after an off week. You're home against Minnesota. And then you travel to Illinois, you travel to Wisconsin, three road games in 4 weeks, and then you have an off week, and then you play Penn State. We literally talked about how that stretch, that 5-game stretch in 6 weeks, which featured 3 road games in 4 weeks, we talked about how that was going to be very, very grueling and daunting. And then you look at it, Washington had a lot of guys on defense hurt, which helped Ohio State in that game. Minnesota was healthy, just Ohio State was better. I think Darius Taylor was not at 100% in that game, but that wouldn't have been a big factor because Minnesota couldn't hang with the Buckeyes. The Buckeyes had a pretty good offensive output in that matchup. But then Illinois threw everything they could at them. I think Illinois was a little bit overrated. And then Wisconsin was playing a third-string quarterback. So that stretch we thought was going to be difficult wasn't. It's possible when the schedule comes out next Tuesday that the schedule that the Buckeyes have and the dates and the off weeks, it's possible that schedule is going to be a little bit difficult. Imagine if you have to go to Iowa, to IU in back-to-back weeks. That's insane. Is it possible? Yes. It is 100% possible. It's possible that Ohio State would have to go to USC the week before playing Michigan. That is also possible. We don't know how the schedule makers for the Big Ten are going to lay this thing out. But you got to prepare now for whatever they decide to do. Seems a little bit crazy that you're preparing for something that you don't know is possible. That's the same thing in football, right? In a regular season game, Ryan Day has to prepare for situations that might not come up. While he's preparing for those situations, if those things come up, he has a plan in place for whatever is thrown his way. Ryan Day has done a great job with leading Ohio State and constantly having Ohio State in contention and being a realistic team that people believe will not only win the Big Ten title, but also win the national championship. I haven't looked at FanDuel's betting lines or betting odds right now for the early favorites to win the national championship. I haven't even tried to lean into that or look into that for study and for your sake at all because I haven't really gone that far. Nor do I really personally care for the betting on. I don't care at all. Some of you do, and so we talk about it here on the show. But my personal opinion, betting odds have never really been a big factor in how I analyze football because they shouldn't. Those aren't a part of what happens on a football field. Well, I would say that. But when there are people in college basketball that are being called for point shaving, At least 20 players were. This came out last week. Literally, I will say anything is possible, but legit, there could be people right now in the sport that are trying to throw games and trying to shave points. And I don't like where we are. I didn't want to bring that up at all. But as I made that comment, I realized it is possible that there are people on the football field that are legit trying to shave points to dictate the outcome of the game. Thank you all for tapping in Locked on Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked on Buckeyes so you get all the latest episodes. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked on Buckeyes ad-free, plus members-only Discord access, and more. Head to lockedonbuckeyes.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On College Football. You can follow me on any social media platform at jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens317@gmail.com. This has been Locked On Buckeyes on a hump day. We'll see you next time.